The studio lights were blinding, the cameras were rolling, and millions of Americans were watching live. On that night, a seasoned news anchor thought she was about to have a routine interview with Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. She didn't know that what began with a smirk and a laugh would end with a revelation so powerful it would silence the room, change her perspective, and leave viewers across the country stunned. It all started with a question that carried more bite than curiosity. The anchor leaned back in her chair, her expression sharp, almost dismissive, as she chuckled at one of Kennedy's trademark quips. "Senator, do you really believe that ordinary people out there understand the complexities of what you're saying? Isn't this all a bit over their heads?" The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, but it was condescending enough to hang thick in the air. The studio crew exchanged glances, expecting Kennedy to fumble or retreat. But instead, he leaned forward. There was no anger in his eyes, no defensiveness in his tone. What came out of his mouth was calm, deliberate, and deeply human. "Ma'am," he began, his southern drawl carrying a warmth that cut through the tension, "let me tell you something about the American people. I grew up in a small town where my daddy worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. My mama made sure we had food, even if it meant she went without. The folks I know, they're smart. They don't have fancy degrees or big platforms like we do, but they understand life. They understand sacrifice. They understand honesty." The laughter died instantly. The anchor's smile faltered as Kennedy went on, his voice now infused with a quiet conviction. He shared the story of a childhood friend, a boy whose father was injured in a factory accident and whose family barely scraped by. That boy, Kennedy said, never gave up on his dreams. He studied under a single light bulb at night, worked weekends to help his family, and eventually became the first in his family to graduate college. "You think these people don't understand?" Kennedy asked softly, his eyes locked on hers. "They understand better than any of us sitting in this studio. Because they live it every single day. They understand that freedom isn't free, that values matter, that faith keeps you going when the world tells you to quit. They don't need lectures. They need leaders who respect them enough to listen." The studio went silent. The anchor, suddenly stripped of her polished confidence, blinked back the weight of his words. Her laughter from moments ago seemed out of place, almost shameful. She tried to move to her next question, but her voice cracked slightly as she spoke, betraying the shift in her heart. But Kennedy wasn't finished. He leaned back, folding his hands, and with a rare vulnerability, he shared something more personal. He talked about the first time he stepped into politics, how people doubted him, laughed at his accent, and told him he'd neave.